Yeah, but so I do know a lot about this sort of stuff. About what I'm talking about. You know, the movies from the 80s, like Back to the Future and Flight of the Navigator, yeah, and shifting timelines, this sort of thing. You know, the thing is, I know a lot, yeah, but I don't really talk a lot about things that I know because it's very hard for me to articulate. I mean, I watch so many of these YouTubers, influencers, like these coaches and these spiritual gurus, and I don't know how they're able to articulate so well these types of experiences because I have my own experience and I do know a lot of stuff, but it's very hard to put into words um, these kind of this kind of knowledge and these kind of spiritual experiences that I'm sure a lot of us can experience and go through. So I was on the TikTok once and on a live, and a lady, they were saying to me, "How come you keep playing with your hair?" And I had to say, you know what? It's just it's nothing to do with my hair, and it's nothing like, oh, I'm trying to draw attention to my hair. It's just an unconscious habit. While I'm on camera, it's just something to do. I think it's just something that helps me like focus on what I'm saying. So don't mind that, please. But what was I saying? What am I saying about this thing? So I've been talking about this feeling of numbness and disassociation, and this feeling sometimes I get of having this, as if I'm timeline shifting or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, so the thing is, I know that in the 80s, they made a lot of these types of movies, these sci-fi movies, about young teenagers, you know, young people in the 20s, either going into the future or going into the past or being alien abducted, and then when they return back home, all the surroundings have changed and all this sort of stuff. Like these two movies, like Back to the Future, like Flight of the Navigator. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, that's another one I think. It's a bit similar. And Weird Science as well, that's another one. But yeah, my generation of people were called Gen Xers. We're Generation X. And I know that they made a lot of these movies in this era, the 1980s, because, how to say, like governmentally, you know, whatever, or the elites or whatever, you know, they do plan things as far ahead into the future as like 30 years, 50 years. They do know what's going to happen like 50, 60, sometimes 100 years into the future. They know how things are going to be. So they made a lot of these movies around this time in the 80s because people my age at that time, like in our teenage, you know, teenage to early 20s year group, they knew that we were going to experience this, as they knew because there were so many changes happening at that time, largely to do with technology. Yeah, because this was the 80s, was just happened just before like the digital age, before everything kind of like moved digitally. So, you know, the elites and people who run the world, whatever, Hollywood and whatever else, they knew that our age group then in the 80s were the ones who were going to experience this massive shift, this massive technological shift, and that by the time the 20-year-olds, the early teenagers and early 20-year-olds, in 10 years' time, when they reach like maybe their 30s, their 40s, that because of the timeline, because of so much advancing, by the time they grew up into full-grown adulthood, they were still going to be seen, they were still going to be experiencing life as if they were still like young, as if they were still like they didn't grow up. And because they know these things in advance, what I'm saying, people are living longer, or this sort of thing. So previously, before that decade, people like parents and their grandparents will probably be dying off, whereas they knew that because health improvements have been made, our age group, a lot of our parents and a lot of our grandparents would still be around. Whereas previously, a lot of them would have passed away and died off. By the time we got to a certain age, a lot of them would still, be here with us, which in effect would make us, that age group, still feel as if we're still like, it is happening like now, this generation, like you have like 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds who, they do say this, like they say, 40 is the new 30, 30 is the new 20. So effectively, even though we're older, because of the shift, we've actually kind of grown down a decade, As I said, I find these things really a bit hard to articulate, but if you can understand what I'm saying. So, because of things like that, and because of things like, they called us Generation X generation. They called us the latchkey generation, because a lot of us grew up when we'd come home from school, whereas in previous generations, the mom would be at home cooking the dinner. It was that very traditional 2.4 lifestyle. The dad was at work, the mum would be at home. But our latchkey generation in the 80s, a lot of us, the family home dynamic was being broken up. So a lot of us came home to like an empty home because our mums were out at work. Women were becoming a lot more independent. A lot more women started to be at work. This generation, things were just changing all around, in the 60s and the 70s, the pill was becoming more widely distributed to women, so there's a lot of change. So women were becoming like more independent from the family, which created more single parent families, up to today, where now we have so many different, the family dynamic has changed so much, it's become so vast, it's become so inclusive. There's no one sort of like traditional set of family group, as well as like culturally, because globally things have shifted as well so much. We've become so much more aware and so much more open to other cultures on a daily basis. What do they call it? The global. Yeah, when I was at university, I wanted to make a whole, because I'd done performing arts at uni, and I wanted to, my like end of year like show, piece, I wanted to devise a whole piece about this topic. So it's called the Global Village. Yeah, this is what they called it. This, it's like the whole world now is on your doorstep. Yeah, and it's true. So life wasn't like this, in the 80s. But over those decades, 80s, 90s, to 2010s, the noughties, things have like become so vast. We've become so much more. Our world concept has opened up so much. Obviously now we've got internet, we've got social media. Back then we didn't have all this Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. All this is like still fairly new, still fairly recent. So this is what I'm saying, this our Generation X, this is something specific that happened to our generation of people. And I think this leads to a lot of us, it gives us this feeling of like this alienation. I think Gen Xers, we're so aware. It's almost like we're too aware. So Generation X, they're people who are, there could be anything from very late 30s up until like mid 50s, that age group. Yeah, so it's kind of like that age group people. Like we're like the grown adults we're the ones who were like out there working, raising families. We're that age group right now, the mums and dads and the workers, keeping the economy system going. Yeah, and then we have, like, as I said, the baby bloomers, they're still competing with us. And then at the same time, the Gen Zs and the millennials, we feel that, you know, they probably feel like we're still competing with them because the generations have opened up as well. So everything's becomes kind of like expansive, you know, like this. So, and our generation, X, I would say, were the first ones to experience life like this. And because of this, I think, I can only talk from my own experience, but a lot of us, I think, have this feeling that I'm talking about, that I have right now, which is this alienation feeling. Because when you become so aware, you become so spiritually attuned to globally what's going on, to locally what's going on your doorstep, to politics, you know, in all aspects of life. We have this vast awareness, this vast understanding about life, you know. I think younger people do too, like the millennials, they have very much wide awareness, but their understanding and their awareness, I think, comes because they've got the internet now, you know. So they're able to just click a button and, you know, find out any information that they need to find out. But I think Gen Xers, I don't know, it's like our experience is very unique. It's uniquely different to the experience of the generation before us and the generations that have come after us. It's a very unique experience, the way we're experiencing life. Yeah, and because of that uniqueness, I think this is what's making a lot of us have this, like, if we're not married, you know, if we haven't established ourselves in that sort of way, I think a lot of us have this alienation feeling and this disassociation feeling from a lot of what's going on around us, and isolation as well. And I don't know if that's what makes a lot of us turn to social media, and why we have this almost like a cult movement now where people are calling themselves the chosen ones. I don't know if it's related. It might be, I'm not sure. But there's many things I want to say right now about this topic. And I'm aware this video is already 12 minutes long, so I'm going to cut this video short as well. So if you have any thoughts about what I've just, you know, anything what I've just discussed in this video, let me know. Like the video, share the video, leave a comment, and subscribe. And if you like this sort of content, subscribe and check out more of my videos. And I will be talking more about this topic over the next series of videos that I'm going to do. So thanks for watching, thanks for joining. Hope you have a great day. I'll speak to you later. Bye.